emailing ombuds@atheism.org. That's OMBUDS. Please remember to include as many details as possible and a news source where applicable. Incidents will be reported to participating national and local non-theist organizations who have agreed to distribute press releases regarding the reported subject matter. That is essentially a anti-defamation league for atheists, and it's about time.
Yes, high time.
Okay, Don, welcome to the show, and welcome to Austin. You have been here now how long?
About a month and a half.
You moved up from San Antonio,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, right. I got a job here at one of the local computer departments, and so I've gotten into that game, and so I'd like to get more involved with the atheist community here, but I'm still participating with the San Antonio group there.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't mind, I'll give you a little update on...
No, please. What's that group called?
The Freethinkers Association of Central Texas is the only atheist or agnostic group in the San Antonio, New Braunfels, that general South Texas. The best I know is the southernmost group in Texas. I don't know of any down toward the valley or any place like that. So there's an interesting difference between the ACA and the Freethinkers. Namely, we don't have nearly as supportive or liberal a community to exist in. San Antonio is quite a conservative community. The Catholic influence is extremely heavy there, and it just goes without. Well, you know the whole story about how Christianity goes without saying, but I think it's even more the case in San Antonio. The newspaper there is constantly splashed on the front paper with activities from the Catholic Church and the religious community in general. But at any rate, we're an active group, and we sponsor various sorts of things. One of them I would mention is that we recently had a debate between a professor of philosophy, Dr. Richard Schernig is a professor of philosophy at San Antonio College, one of the community colleges there in San Antonio. And he debated a representative from the Church of Christ, a Dr. Law, and it was actually an extended debate. They went for 2 nights. The first night, the proposition was, I know the Christian God exists, and the second night was, I know the Christian God does not exist. And it was a 2-hour session each night, and we had several hundred people in attendance each night, and it was done in a gentlemanly but spirited manner. And of course, from my point of view as an atheist, the argument on the Christian side eventually from design has been refuted many times over the centuries. But it was a good experience to have that large a group come together, and at least to get some, one, it gave us a chance for some publicity. 2, it gave us a chance to interact with the Christian community in a respectfully confrontational way, rather than a destructively confrontational way. It gave them a chance to see us as real people, instead of a demonizing kind of experience. And I will say, we put out a lot of literature on our table there in the auditorium, and it was all gone. People picked it up, and I assume it was not our small contingent of atheists that picked up their own material. So in that regard, it was that's one of our activities that we're especially pleased that we had in the past few months.
Do you know if you've gotten any big influx of contacts from?
It was only recently. It's it's within barely a week of this taping.
Right.
So we really haven't had time to get to see what kind of response we might have have had to it. But it was it took a lot of effort to put it together, and we were pleased that it came off as smoothly as it did. And it was a chance for the atheist community or the free-thinking community in San Antonio to get visibility that we don't normally get. It's surprising to me the difference in just the tone of the culture between San Antonio and Austin. There's a very clearly noticeable difference in the degree of liberalness and tolerance in Austin versus San Antonio. So we swim in a little different water there
right.
in San Antonio.
Does that make it difficult for you to attract members? I mean, apart from the fact that there's probably fewer people that would be interested in the first place. I mean,
yeah.
Do you encounter obstructions in the media? Do you have ways of getting your word out?
The primary thing is that we get virtually no coverage. Is that for one thing, to go into a little history of it, there's only one newspaper in San Antonio, as there is here in Austin, but that newspaper is what are there two?
We have the Chronicle.
The Chronicle. Yeah, San Antonio has one also. The
and if you really stretch your imagination, the Daily Texan.
Well, that UT has a paper.
Yeah. But the San Antonio newspaper is largely influenced, as much of the media is there, by a multi-millionaire who financed the Attorney General's election here, a fellow by the name of Leininger. He owns a whole series of businesses there in San Antonio, and he virtually controls the newspaper there. So you get these full-page pictures and articles and front page coverage of something like Catholic Church number 235 opened their new sanctuary this weekend, and it's
that's news.
It's front page news. It's not just a sidebar on the front page. It's a
space shuttle launch. Who cares? We opened a new church.
Yeah. No,
now, when you launch one of your churches into space, that's news.
Yeah. So they get an 8x10 picture of some bishop or somebody praying in front of this multi-million-dollar altar and so on, and we struggle to get 2 or 3 column inches on the back pages, and as a matter of fact, seldom get it. So that was the long answer to the question. Do we have trouble getting coverage? The answer is yes.
What about the San Antonio Current? That's sort of the San Antonio's vague equivalent of the Chronicle.
They have been at least fair, if not sympathetic to us. Now, some of the viewers in this area may know about the whole thing about the cenotaph or memorial to freethinkers in comfort.
Yes.
And I will say that we got a sympathetic hearing, both in the Current ran some significant in terms of size, and also sympathetic articles to our situation with regard to that. The San Antonio newspaper covered it very sparsely, but they did publish one cartoon that was, clearly sympathetic to the fact that we were being treated in a bigoted fashion. Mm-hmm. So I do have to hand them that. They at least one time they ran a political cartoon.
Managing editor called in sick that day.
Yeah,
someone slipped it in.
Something happened. And our so the result is, one, we don't have nearly the background that Austin has. Love or hate Madalyn Murray O'Hair. This was her base of operations to a large extent, and
that hasn't necessarily worked to our advantage. I think way more people were on the hate side of that.
But the point is that it gets people at least accustomed to hearing about it. It gets them. They come to accept it as part of the local culture.
I'll tell you though, or warn you, as the case may be, that even the Chronicle, which is like the counterculture paper here in Austin, a lot of counterculture includes, some weird fringe New Age wackiness, which doesn't necessarily line up with atheism either. They may not be Christians, but they may believe all kinds of other weird things. And I've detected a certain bias in favor of, sort of generic spirituality in that paper. So it's at least it's a pretty open forum. I've seen a lot of exchanges in their letters column. That it's a little harder to get our letters published in the Statesman, but
they drift toward the New Age stuff quite a bit, do they? Yeah.
Some issues are better than others. Some are worse.
Well,
it's not so much that they do articles about it. It's that there's just an assumption that, people are spiritual, and a lot of advertising from various New Age things.
Well, that's really the Chronicles main priority.
Anyway,
that sort of thing concerns me about Americans is that they buy into this spirituality so much. I think what's the classic song by that Grace Slick sings? Alice.
Don't ask a White Rabbit.
The White Rabbit. Yeah. Sometimes words have. Is that a phrase? Sometimes words have two meaning, or it's a Led Zeppelin song, "Stairway to Heaven."
Okay.
That's it. Yeah, another good drug song. Right? Not that we have anything to do with drugs, but the point that I was getting to.
What kind of a comment was that?
Well, the obvious thing for people to say.
Maybe you old folks who were like alive and had money for drugs in the '60s.
But the obvious thing to do for believers to say, oh well, those atheist people, sympathize with the druggies. Well, that may or may not be, and that may or may not, have its own problems. But,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
But the point is that people sometimes use words and they don't even know what they're they're saying. A baby gets killed and they say, "Why did that happen?" Well, the why that they're asking may be, where is the justice in it? Another answer to the question why is because the baby was in the wrong place at the wrong time. The child gets run over by the car, and someone says, why did that happen? And there are two answers to that question. And the why is the child was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and what the person wants to ask is where is the sort of cosmological justice in that child being killed. And the same thing happens with spirituality, is that people sometimes talk about being spiritual, and they mean things like having some sense of awe about the universe, and some sense of the sense of surprise of even being alive and conscious, and those kinds of things. And when you come to consider some of those questions, people will say, well, those are spiritual questions. What is my place in the universe? And other people will take that and say, well, that must mean that you want a connection with God, which is not necessarily true at all. So
I've noticed that it's a common phenomenon, even among people who, while they may not call themselves atheist or agnostic or use terminology like that, while they still may reject organized religions such as Christianity, Islam, Judaism, what have you, many people just find it very distasteful to think that the universe, all it really is this big machine, and that we're just machines. walking pieces of meat, and there's
Sure.
you know, it's the whole thing.
Oh, and that you get to be dead inside of like,
you get to
127 years.
Yeah. And so
Right.
there is still that kind of, no, there's got to be more. They've got to be, but it's so ill-defined. They don't want to be sold the prepackaged organized religion that is so prevalent in society, but
They still want to be coddled on those particular issues.
Right.
Sure.
Right.
They're not willing to accept the proposition that when you die, you're dead.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they can accept that about other kinds of biological beings.
Yeah.
But
It can be a frightening thing to think about, the idea that, you know, if you just sit around and have nothing else to think about, and you're like, one day I won't be doing this. It'll be like nothing. If all I do is die, then there'll be like nothing, and I won't exist, and I won't even be somewhere else to remember doing this that I'm doing now. When I was alive, if there's nothing after you die, and that's a scary, which, you know, I can understand.
Yeah, well, people, you know,
would be a worrisome thing.
A lot of people don't know that, you know, that Mark Twain was an out-and-out atheist, and
Right.
and you know, some of his writings didn't get released until long after his death, and people are surprised to hear about Letters from the Earth or The Mysterious Stranger, or some of his writings that are outright atheistic. But some journalist asked him, well, you know, Mr. Twain, you know, aren't you concerned about where you're going to be after you die? And he said, well, I wasn't concerned for billions of years, you know, before I was born, so I don't guess I'll be concerned after I die, you know. Yeah. And that's, you know, I mean, truly, we don't worry about, well, where was I for the first, you know, 3 billion years of the Earth's existence or something? Where was my soul, you know? And I don't recall any real discomfort in those first 3 billion years, you know, so I don't anticipate any real discomfort after I die. You know,
having a sense of, you know, desire for self-preservation is one thing, right?
Sure.
And that's perfectly natural. You know, I personally address that by getting real interested in medical technology, in you know, and ways of extending human lifespan as long as possible. But these are practical physical solutions to what is essentially a practical physical problem, right? If human bodies wear out and die, that's an engineering problem.
Yeah.
You know, it's not a supernatural problem. At least I'm not going to consider that until there's the slightest evidence that there's something supernatural going on.
Yeah, and that's for me, that, you know, that is absolutely the fundamental underlying problem in American thought, if not in the world in general, is to believe in the supernatural when there is no credible evidence. There is simply no credible evidence for the supernatural, and similarly, there's no credible evidence for an afterlife. But if you accept in general the proposition that there's something supernatural, or there's some aspects of the supernatural that are operational in the everyday world, the result of that is that your brain goes out of gear.
Yeah.
All bets are off, you know. Anything can happen.
Right.
And I've heard people discuss this Columbine operation, Columbine situation, Columbine happening.
Yeah.
And ask, well, how could we get to that situation? Well, you know, how we can get to that situation is we make our young people dysfunctional by giving them a mixed message that on one hand, they should be rational, they should learn rules of logic, they should learn to investigate and look for cause and effect, and, you know, the whole thing of the scientific approach to phenomenon. On the other hand, we tell them to talk to what I think you call the space daddy, or
the cosmic space pixie.
Yeah.
The big invisible man.
Yeah, we tell them to talk to these ethereal, non-evident powers, and that at some point somehow going to affect their life. Well, that's enough to, if anyone takes all of that seriously,
and they're diametrically opposed messages.
Sure, it's truly enough to drive someone crazy. It's truly enough to put their brain in a dysfunctional situation. You know, I mean, when I talk to, I'm the president of the Freethinkers there in San Antonio, and we have discussions, and sometimes people come in and ask very straightforward questions about, well, why has Christianity lasted so long, and how did so many people get... Well, the question that I ask them is it possible for an entire culture to be mistaken? And I think by looking at history, the clear evidence is yes.
In fact, if you are a Christian, you have to believe that the answer is yes, because not every society is Christian.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you believe that, then there are plenty of examples right now of societies that believe something completely different.
Exactly, and there are examples of cultures that have absolutely disappeared from the face of the earth. Sometimes as the result of religious beliefs, or just because their religious beliefs obviously were not powerful enough to preserve them. And there's speculation, for instance, that the Easter Islanders put themselves out of existence because of religious practices that decimated their environment, that simply cleared the island of everything that it took to support the culture, and so they disappeared. So clearly, that appears to be one culture that was where the entire culture was mistaken, and not only that their beliefs resulted in their own destruction. Or, not long ago, not far from here, the Aztecs. All of those people believed one thing, and you think in terms of, well, a teenager walks out on the street of an Aztec town in the morning and sees people being sacrificed on top of a pyramid, and turns to their parent and says, why do we do this? Or should we be doing this? That doesn't look to me like the right thing to be doing. And the parent says, well, of course, all good Aztecs do that. And if you don't believe it, go ask your uncle, and go ask your aunt, and go ask grandma, and go ask grandpa, and go ask the priest down the street at the temple. And of course, all of those people tell the young teenager, well, yes, it's the right thing to do. Well, none of them are left anymore to speak of that believe that. And so the point is that an entire culture can be mistaken, and it's equally possible that our culture, that the American Christian culture, could be mistaken. But in general, our population is not willing to entertain that thought.
Right.
But that whole thing of belief in the supernatural, and is to me a root of dysfunction, and it puts our young people in a situation where if they begin to systematically question the beliefs of their culture, it leads to a dead end. Sometimes right. I didn't mean a macabre pun there. Sometimes it
right.
truly it leads.
They're told to believe things that if you look at them, dispassionately and clearly and rationally, they don't hold up.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's
another reason probably that you could have given for why Christianity or most organized religions have existed for a couple of millennia now, is that nobody has yet discovered the cure for death.
Yeah.
So there's this big unknown that faces every single living human on this planet, and as we said earlier in the show, it's a scary prospect for most people.
Sure, there's definitely...
And that fear can be manipulated by religions that tell you,
there are definitely feelings that they're addressing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I would add, another reason why religions can continue to exist for hundreds or thousands of years is because that's their business. They are in the business of continuing to exist. Right? I mean, that's how they get by. I mean, I don't know of a single religion that is in the business of actually changing things so that the religion itself becomes unnecessary.
Right, sure.
They're in the business of making themselves seem necessary.
Sure. The famous thing that the purpose of a bureaucracy is to perpetuate itself.
Right.
And,
exactly.
And organized religion certainly fits in that general.
Business just like any other. I mean, IBM certainly would never want to come up with a computer that would mean they never had to make more computers. Right. A computer so perfect that IBM, that the whole manufacturing of new computers ever in the future became superfluous. So, any corporate or business or bureaucratic entity exists to make itself more necessary. Yeah.
And so all their arguments to the contrary, that it's not clear that they've always acted in the best interests of their constituency, or that their motives are entirely in the interest of those that they purport to serve.
Right.
Many times that they appear to act more in the interest of their of their own hierarchy and structure than anything else. But what prompted that series of comments was your observation that newspapers often these days have some kind of purportedly spiritual section to them, something perhaps doing with a general New Age approach to some kind of energy that can be found in crystals or something like that, or sometimes good sound effects.
I don't know if you folks at home can hear that. We don't have Arlo today in the sound room, so Vic is doing the sound effects.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
He's very good at it.
Today.
Yeah. He's very good at it, folks. It goes over great with the chicks and everything.
Yeah. So we, they have these sections that supposedly are in some fashion spiritual, but right next to them, is the horoscope column.
Right.
Something that's been debunked for centuries, but it's becoming more and more popular. You see it in all the magazines, at the checkout stands. Every newspaper. When any reputable scientist will tell you that it's been that it's been discredited.
Yeah, and people place real stock in that, because just like as with religious belief or Christian belief, which is all about wanting to have a cosmic dad still giving you guidance through life, people who follow horoscopes and psychics and things like that want some sort of cosmic authority guiding them. And there is a hilarious anecdote in Unweaving the Rainbow, Richard Dawkins' most recent book, where he talks about which is sort of Dawkins' version of it's a similar book to Carl Sagan's Demon Haunted World, discussing just why people or Mike Shermer's Why People Believe Weird Things, just the nature of what it's all about, weird things and belief in them. And he talks a possibly apocryphal story, but a newspaper, just like hack writer working in the frontline trenches, a grunt at some newspaper, drew the short straw one day, and it was his job to concoct the horoscope predictions for that particular day. And he was feeling a little bit puckish, and so on one of the zodiacal entries, he put something like he was fired for this because the switchboard's lit like a runway. He wrote something like, all of the woes of yesteryear will be as nothing compared to what will befall you today. And people were calling in a panic to this newspaper, and the guy got sacked. He got fired for terrifying half the population of this town. So
spreading terror and populism.
And we laugh about that, but there is a genuine emotional, I think, hole that people, and they're looking for this quick kind of Band-Aid, like this sort of, to fill this when they really ought to be being told that they have worth as people.
Did you ever go through a phase of believing in that kind of stuff? I did.
Not,
when I was about
not horoscopes.
13. But I had sort of this general, let's check out this occult stuff, and I got some books from the library, and I read them, and I tried some of the little things that they taught you to do, and and nothing ever worked.
Yeah.
But some of it tantalizingly seemed like it was almost working, and that was really interesting. I mean, I can see, looking back now, how had I had a little less presence of mind, I could easily have gone ahead and really locked myself into a belief where I started, not paying attention to the misses and only paying attention to the things that seemed like they were hits or almost hits, and make myself believe it. It was exciting to think that there might be magical powers that I could use to my advantage.
Yeah, somehow influence them.
And I mean, that's a very appealing notion, that there might be some power you can access without really doing anything to deserve it.
Right.
So yeah, that's still going strong.
Well, I brought a book with me today, and that couple of things tied together there is the this belief in the supernatural, and the way that acts against rationality, and people sometimes, I think, are not conscious of the fact that, and it took a while for this to bubble up in my mind, sort of, to come to a real conscious formulation, is that, well, let's start with a more general observation, that Americans sometimes don't realize how isolated they are in the world in terms of their religious beliefs. Europeans and many other parts of the world see Americans as naive and simplistic in many ways because of their thoroughgoing and widespread religious beliefs. Europeans don't come anywhere near sharing the breadth of religious belief that there is in the United States.
Or the intensity of the zealotry.
What's that?
The zealotry.
Oh yeah, and the intensity and the energy that we put into it. And so I was reading a book recently that really put into words what came to my mind, namely that there's a strong anti-intellectual or non-rational history to Americans. They don't want to know about science, and they don't want to know about methodical approaches to the world. They want this supernatural approach to things, and you can see it in an informal way in things like John Wayne movies. I mean, the guy who carries books, wears glasses, and knows mathematics, and has read the classics is a wimp. I mean, no guy who has read Homer and read Shakespeare could possibly ride a horse correctly. He's got to fall off the horse, and he's probably going to shoot himself in the foot.
Right.
Not only that, he's going to fall down and break his glasses.
Book learning ain't practical.
Yeah.
Man who shot Liberty Valance.
Yeah. And so, the whole that's not just an isolated scene in a movie. It's a long-standing trend in America. And so this the book that I'm referring to is by a professor of history. It was a 1964 Pulitzer Prize winner, Anti-Intellectualism in American Life by Richard Hofstadter. And in here, he traces very clearly that, to my surprise, that actually the Puritans were quite an intellectual people, that they brought respect for learning and for scholarship with them, but that as fundamentalism and denominationalism, that is, splits in religious beliefs, became more prevalent in America, that there came with it a very strong sense of this idea. And this is primary especially to Baptist belief, but also to many other fundamentalist belief. And that's the idea that every person is qualified to be an interpreter of Holy Scriptures, that somehow there's this supernatural inspiration that gets into your brain and makes you able to read the Bible without any knowledge of its history, or how it got to be put together, or how it was edited, or any number of other things, that you can just read it as a basic book and somehow come to this knowledge about how how the world works. Well, what that eventually came down to was you don't need to go to school. What's important is you need to get out there and save souls. If you get right down to it, everybody's either going to go to heaven or go to hell. And what could be more important than going to heaven instead of going to hell? And if you're able to convince people that they need God to go to heaven, then that's the most important thing. Let's get down, good old American approach. Let's get down to brass tacks here, And brass tacks are that you want to go to heaven and avoid hell. And if you're effective at getting the message of God to people and saving their souls from hell and getting them into the kingdom of God, then you don't need all this book learning, And that idea came to be a very central aspect of American life, and it's embodied in an unconscious way in many things that we do today. If there's let's take a simple example, a very straightforward example. Psychology. If there's one thing that psychology has established in its short existence, it is that we respond, humans and animals, to positive reinforcement. That positive reinforcement is an effective way to shape behavior, and that negative reinforcement, that is beating up on people, causes dysfunction.
Jeff, you're the best Atheist Experience host ACA's ever had.
Now there's some positive reinforcement.
Yeah. Sorry, just trying to prove him wrong.
Yeah. Right. And we see it. We see it in a practical way. Every day. I mean, if you go to some local theme park, go down to San Antonio to SeaWorld and watch the killer whales jumping out of the water, or go someplace and
food treat.
Yeah, go to the rodeo. Go to the rodeos and see these horses that do astonishing things. All of that is the result of using positive reinforcement. Two things. One, my grandfather used to travel from Oklahoma down through Texas, and he would break horses by chaining them to a post and using a tree limb on them.
Yeah.
That was the way that he broke horses. Today, of course, he'd be arrested for it, as would anyone who claimed to be a horse trainer. That's recognized not only as ineffective training, but cruelty to animals. And no one would seriously suggest that you could teach seals or killer whales or horses or whomever to perform effectively by beating up on them. But Americans at a fundamental level are not yet convinced that you should not punish children to teach them. Most Americans still think, spare the rod, spoil the child. The reason these teenagers are putting tattoos all over themselves and these rings through their noses and trying drugs is because nobody takes them out behind the woodshed and wails on them enough, And that's just a restatement of the fact that the way you teach a horse to perform or a seal to do tricks is by beating on them.
Right.
Well, no, you don't.
Right. And that's not to say that discipline, to a certain extent, doesn't play a valid role in parenting.
No, sure.
Yeah. But you're right. I mean, a child, just like a puppy dog or a baby seal, will learn to be a good person through the example of their parents. If the parents live their lives as good people, and they will learn from that. They will observe people being good and doing good stuff around them and say, well, that's that's the way I ought to be.
Yeah,
Learning by positive example and reinforcement.
Right.
I certainly would not condone violence to teach, to make kids fall in line.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, it seems to me that another problem in our culture is that all these belief systems, all these ways that we tell people, keep on believing these fairy stories, and you can make it in life. It's going to be really, really easy, and you don't have to learn what you don't have to really learn anything. You don't have to. You can pray to get what you want. You don't really have to work hard, right? It seems like a concerted, if unconscious effort to keep people at the stage of little immature babies. So how do we grow people up and yet not do like they did in the caveman days, where you paint some scary paintings on the wall and you take your little kids in there and you do the rite of manhood and scare the crap out of them.
Yeah.
And say, you are man now, you are grown up now, and you are a warrior, and you have to start thinking about real, serious, practical things.
Yeah. Well,
I don't know. It's a tough one.
I think what's happening right now is that, and I always try to avoid calling people stupid or dumb or those kinds of things, because I sincerely think that people are capable, one, of being mistaken, and two, that people are shaped by their culture, by what they encounter, what they're told, what they see other people doing. They're shaped at such an early age and so thoroughly as they continue to grow that it's to a large degree unconscious.
Yeah.
And they can never quite bring themselves to do what every good missionary tells every native to do, namely, stop and think about your culture and reject it. Come to this sudden moment of enlightenment where you realize that what your mom and dad and aunt and uncle and priest told you was completely wrong, and what you're supposed to do is come to an evaluation of that and decide to throw that all overboard and take a different path.
Yeah.
Well, of course, Christians in particular, and Jews, and Muslims find it very difficult to accept the possibility that they could be fundamentally wrong, and that everything, the majority of what they've believed up to this point is a mistake, and that they need to stop and change direction.
Yeah.
And
it's really hard. I mean, when you're talking about gods, right? Invisible, intangible, cosmic beings that work in mysterious ways.
Right.
It's awfully difficult to bring it down to a point where you can clearly show somebody, hey, that just doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
It's gotta. In fact, you can't. Right. If there's a cosmic, omnipotent being out there that has some mysterious reason why it doesn't want me to know it exists, I'm not going to know it exists.
Yeah, I like Woody Allen's thing about, he could give me an obvious sign like a large deposit in my bank account.
Yeah, I think I've got that quote in my little list here of celebrity atheists that I got off.
Yeah, right.
So really what it seems to me that it takes for people to reach that realization is not so much a matter of providing impossible evidence of the non-existence of weird things like this, but it's more a matter of just promoting rational thought.
Exactly.
Promoting first of all just the basic fundamental American concept of individual liberty and individual freedom, that there shouldn't be any authority out there telling you what you can and cannot think about.
Right.
And then going ahead and thinking carefully and seriously.
Mm-hmm.
We're still not teaching critical thinking in our schools,
and
that drives me nuts.
Right. Well,
I had to figure it out myself.
Yeah. Well, what it's back to the subject of, or just to use another example from psychology. it's well known that the phenomenon called mixed messages, where you encourage a child to do something and then you prevent them from doing it. You know, like, well, Daddy loves you, but don't get close to me. You know, or well, I'm really interested in you achieving well, but
you're fired.
Yeah, why don't you go somewhere else? What's that?
Yeah.
But you're fired.
Yeah, well,
Just do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, parents give children very, very mixed messages. You know, school is important, but sports is more important. You know, I have time to go fishing and watch the football game, but I don't have time to help you with your homework. You know,
Yeah.
science is important. You should work hard on your homework, but once a week, let's all dress up in a special costume and go to a specially scheduled place and put our brains out of gear and meditate on the supernatural. You know, I mean, those are very mixed messages. And the point I'm getting to is that kind of thoroughgoing mixed message is totally capable of creating mental dysfunction. And the question is, you know, where are our young people's moral compass? You know, why is it that they can't seem to figure out how life works? Well, the reason they can't figure out how life works is nobody gives them a consistent, straightforward, understandable approach to life. On the one hand, we say, do things in a rational fashion, and on the other hand, we say, talk to this invisible being in the sky. And it drives people nuts, especially young people who haven't quite gotten over, you know, being serious about life. Instead, I mean, you know, old folks, us older people sometimes especially, we're in a rut and we're willing to stay in that rut. But young people, by their very nature, are trying to figure things out, and so they take these questions seriously. And if they take them seriously, these mixed messages of believe the supernatural but be logical can drive them nuts.
Here's a mixed message right here. I'm looking at this.
What is this?
Go ahead and show what that is. This
is a catalog for Texas Union informal classes. These are things that people, just the general public or UT students, can take, and but they're not university classes for university credit. They're just fun things to do if you got some spare time.
But you're going to a college, to a college campus,
but here's some of
these things.
And there are quite a few just supernaturalist.
Before you read that, can I make one more comment?
Yes,
there's a point that Don brought up.
Absolutely. This particular one.
You know, and I think the fundamentalists understand that there's a mixed message, but they want to solve the problem by putting all the emphasis on their half of the message. They want to solve the problem of science as a rational pursuit that comes up with answers that don't agree with their religion by undermining the basis of science and turning it into a supernatural exercise.
Absolutely.
They want to get rid of the mixed message by getting their 10 Commandments posted on our public schools.
Right.
They want their point of view to be the one, unquestioned point of view. And, the problem with that is I don't think that you can make everybody be stupid. You can't make everybody be smart either. But if you've got a choice between those two choices, right, either indoctrinate everybody in the superstition, or indoctrinate as many people as possible in rationality.
Yeah, and
you're probably better off with the rationality.
Yeah, and that's how I would cast it, rather than in terms of being stupid and being smart.
You're right.
I would.
You're right. I actually don't like to use those terms either. But
I would.
Sometimes you can't help it.
People who have watched the show know that sometimes I lash out, and I feel bad about it afterwards. But some people are
so angry.
Some people are so proud of their mistaken position, and so emotionally attached to their mistaken position.
Yeah,
Right.
It's
Yeah,
all over this.
They
catalog.
are. They truly are.
Okay, so
Boy, howdy.
show us some of the classes you can take at UT.
Well, here's one that's amazing. Now, once again, these aren't UT classes, but
Okay,
they're
they are given by
just
volunteer instructors
That's
who are
right.
teaching things, skills that they think either people actually need, or at least people are willing to pay money for.
Yeah, and most of these are quite practical. There's like how to use certain computer programs. A friend of mine taught a class in cartooning once. There's some music, like how to learn to play an instrument, but some of these are just kind of goofball. Here's one right here, a class in past life regression. Write-up says, as we change our clothes, the soul too changes. And with these changes come other lives. So does that mean every time you change your clothes, you become a different person?
I think they're being poetic there, and they mean bodies, but they're saying clothes.
It makes no sense. The belief of past lives or reincarnation has spanned continents and cultures everywhere. Who cares? That doesn't mean it's a valid belief just because it's old. That's a fallacy there.
Argument ad populum.
Right. It is a central doctrine in Hinduism and Buddhism. Reincarnation was also part of the Celts, Druids, and early Christian beliefs. If you have ever wondered if you lived before, take that step and find out for yourself. Then it says, quite audaciously, there is nothing to lose and everything to gain.
That's Pascal's wager.
Yes, but on top of that, there is an admission to take these classes. Each class has its own registration fee. So if you take this particular class and pay
it's going to cost you something.
That's right. And if you find out that, in fact, you haven't lived before, which you haven't,
you've lost
that fee that you could have, I don't know, gone partying with or something. But anyway, it's just weird. As an author, international speaker, and intuitive counselor.
Intuitive counselor.
Yeah, Beth Carpenter encourages and motivates individuals on finding their way to their higher self.
There was a great...
Full of these. There
was a great little anecdote in the Skeptical Inquirer.
Yes.
Talking about these 1-800 psychic hotline numbers.
Oh, yeah.
A young lady who was taking psychology and sociology classes in college needed a summer job, and she had an opportunity to become a phone psychic.
Right.
Thinking to herself, this is all nonsense, but at least I'll get a chance to actually talk to people and help them with their real problems.
Right.
And what she immediately discovered was that if she did not play along as if she was getting her advice psychically from astrology or tarot cards or whatever their gimmick was, that the people on the other end of the phone wouldn't listen to her.
Right.
Where's my reading? I want my reading.
Yeah,
what does my reading say? And she's going, ma'am, you just told me you've got a husband who beats you. Here is the phone number for that you should call.
The
battered wives hotline.
Or domestic abuse, something.
Right, and these people wouldn't pay attention to her unless she claimed supernatural authority.
It's
just amazing. What is wrong with people?
Yeah.
They want the parent. They want a daddy, a big space daddy that never goes away.
I love the joke about, the psychic hotline answering machine, We know who you are. We know why you've called. Hang up,
I've always wanted to call a psychic hotline and say, hey, guess whose credit card I'm using?
You know about the psychic hotline that truly, a hotline that went bankrupt, You would think they would have foreseen that.
You would think.
You would think. Yeah.
Well, whenever they have the psychic Fahrenheit, I always wonder why they put the date and the phone number. It's sort of like everyone's like, oh yeah, we knew that was going to happen. We'll be there. Yeah. Here's another one. Living life as a spiritual journey. And this is a class. Do you yearn for divine inner guidance, yet fear what it will tell you? Says the write-up. We are all on a journey to remember that our physical life and our spiritual path are one and the same. The path can be bumpy or smooth. The choice is yours. It may be time to suspend the ego, engage the spirit, and quote, and here you've underlined
turn
this.
Off the brain and turn on your emotions.
Yes. Focus on the spirit. You underlined this part because it's so astounding. Focus on the spiritual lessons involved in surrendering personal will to divine will. Abdication of personal and moral responsibility for yourself.
Right. What we say, do what we tell you because we speak for supernatural powers.
Yeah.
American life is just shot through with this kind of thing. It's everywhere you turn you hear this kind of stuff.
Yeah. Meet your guardian angel.
Okay, one last one.
It's not a singles thing, surprisingly. That's a different class. Meet your guardian angel. We all have guardian angels who desire to assist us with life challenges and who can help us create more joy. Unfortunately, during April 19th or something, they were all the guardian angels were out grabbing a smoke while Waco was on fire. But there were people you're supposed to protect. Oops. Now, anyway, in this experiential class, it says we will use guided meditation to help meet our guardian angel and learn exercises to focus and expand our ability to feel the loving presence of our guardian angel in our daily life. Bring paper, pencil, and some cash for handouts. Deborah Dahman claims to be an angel channel.
Well, wait a minute. There's cash for handouts and a fee for the class.
Yeah, is an angel channel.
So they're milking you on this one.
Certified spiritual response therapy consultant. I guess that's what you get from those mail order.
I didn't bring that in today. But
well.
for a fee, you can get certified.